still waters of Conception Bay are a stark contrast to the stormy seas the Camilla had weathered during last week's storm. The Finnish freighter was anchored just off Little Bell Island, listing at more than 30 degrees. Boatloads of the Curious circled the giant vessel as workers aboard her began the job of recovery. The drama of the Camilla began Thursday morning. The freighter, loaded with newsprint, had lost all power and was dead in the water. Unable to maneuver itself on the high seas, the Camilla was rolling side-on with 40-foot waves. With a major storm headed to the area, the captain asked for an evacuation. A cormorant helicopter from Gander went to the scene, and after refueling on board an oil rig, began the task of lifting the stranded crew members.
And there was a strong wind and high waves again. Because the boat had no control, it was sideways to the wave and the winds, rolling a lot, up to 40 degrees each way. And there's a storm approaching the area for tomorrow with even stronger winds. So the captain of the vessel didn't think they could stay on board. So they obviously requested to be evacuated. So we left Gander, went directly to the Henry Goodrich oil rig. We refueled there and then proceeded to the vessel. It took us an hour and 10 minutes to get everybody off the vessel. Again, because of the winds, very challenging, but we managed to do that safely. We got everybody off safely in 1 hour, and then we flew back to St. John's with everybody on board.
The crew of the Camilla arrived in St. John's 3 hours later. The voyage of the vessel, badly beaten by the stormy North Atlantic and towed by tug to Conception Bay, where it remains, took several days. John Tompkins, NTV News.
The ship has a 23-degree list after taking on seawater some 400 kilometers off the coast. Today, crews are surrounding the ship with a boom. It will catch any oil in case there's a leak. They'll begin pumping seawater out of the ship tomorrow. Oily water in the ship's engine room will be pumped to other vessels or used as ballast. It could take 10 days before the ship is straightened up and towed to port. As well as Canadian officials, Finnish investigators are at the site. The Camilla is carrying a cargo of newsclippings.
The still waters of Conception Bay were a stark contrast to the stormy seas the Camilla had weathered more than a week earlier. On Saturday, the Finnish freighter was anchored just off Little Bell Island, listing at more than 30 degrees. Boatloads of the Curious circled the giant vessel as workers aboard her began the job of recovery. The drama of the Camilla began Thursday morning. The freighter, loaded with newsprint, had lost all power and was dead in the water. Unable to maneuver on the high seas, it was rolling side-on with a major storm headed its way. The captain asked for an evacuation. A cormorant helicopter from Gander was dispatched to the scene, and after refueling on board an oil rig, began the task of lifting the stranded crew members.
Because that boat lost all power to the vessel, they couldn't go anywhere. They were hopeless, and there was a strong wind and high waves again. Because the boat had no control, it was sideways to the wave and the winds, rolling a lot, up to 40 degrees each way. And there's a storm approaching the area for tomorrow with even stronger winds. So the captain of the vessel didn't think they could stay on board. So they obviously requested to be evacuated.
The crew of the Camilla arrived in St. John's 3 hours later. The voyage of the vessel, badly beaten by the stormy North Atlantic and towed by tug to Conception Bay, took several days. Workers on the Camilla will now spend the next several days removing the water from its hull and engine room. A spokesperson for Secunda Marine, the company that recovered the ship, told NTV News that an assessment of the ship indicated it is secure, and work is now underway to remove water trapped in the Camilla's hull and engine room, a process that could take a week or longer. John Tompkins, NTV News.
Secunda Marine, under close supervision by the Coast Guard, has been working to recover the Camilla. The ship was towed more than 100 kilometers before resting just offshore from Little Bell Island. Secunda has since pumped most of the water from the ship. Most of the remaining water rests in the ship's engine room. A spokesperson for DFO says the coming storm will suspend the recovery of the Camilla for at least the weekend. When the ship first arrived in Conception Bay, it was listing at 23 degrees. That has since been reduced to a 19-degree list.
Meanwhile, the disabled freighter Camilla was towed into port in St. John's a short while ago. The Finnish vessel was brought in by a salvage tug from Conception Bay. That's where the Camilla has been for the past week and a half, being pumped out and made seaworthy. The freighter ran into trouble in a storm last month when her engines failed and the crew had to be rescued by helicopter. The salvage company Secunda Marine will take another day or two to do some final work before handing the ship over to its Finnish owners. The Camilla's cargo of paper is still on board. The owners have to determine whether to leave it there or transfer it to another vessel for transport.
The disabled vessel Camilla was towed into port in St. John's late this afternoon. Recently, 16 crew members on board the vessel Camilla had to be rescued by a Cormorant helicopter. The vessel was without power. A storm was approaching. The captain declared an emergency. 16 crew members were lifted to safety. The vessel was then towed into Conception Bay, listing at about 30 degrees. Some of the water has been pumped from the ship, but further repairs will be conducted at the port in St. John's.
It was on a Thursday in late January when the military hoisted 16 stranded crew members of the Camilla, which had lost power and was listing badly in high seas. The vessel is now tied up in the capital. 2 sea tugs are snuggled alongside, and the remaining water left in is being pumped out in order to eliminate the listing. The salvage company, Secunda Marine, says the salvage side of the story is completed, and the vessel has been redelivered to the Finnish owners, who are now in discussions with the owner of the newsprint on board.